There we go. Are we on? What about this guy? Yep. Okay, cool. Incredible. Incredible. Are we there with Facebook and all you guys? Are we there? Yeah, crazy. Facebook's on. Okay, I see Instagram and TikTok. Never mind. All right. Okay, so I guess we're on. All right. Sweaty Cup. Welcome to live Sunday night or live uh, Monday morning here in the real world. Sorry, I got to start making people angry right away, right off the bat. Okay. No, the rest of the world's real too. It's just, you know, good. Okay, you're all popping on there. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, good, good. I don't see anybody on YouTube or any of that stuff. All right. So what what happened, of course, is that I upgraded my computer last night, and of course, I couldn't find Restream. Here we are, though. Anyway, so good morning, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this. Are we May 12th? Yeah, May 12th over here, because it's May 11th for you guys on the other side. There we go. Cool. Okay, people are coming up. All right. So anyway, um, today I got to talk to you about some amazing changes that are coming about. Um, I mean, it's taken us a while, but I think we're finally there. And yes, howdy, Eileen, Davey. Yeah. All right, you guys are there. I guess a lot of people thought I wasn't going to show up today, right? But I'm here. Okay. So, so some really good things coming up, and let me just explain it to you. Uh, we are we're just about ready to launch the new membership program. Okay, and the reason we're doing it is because there's several reasons, but number one is it turns out that um, I cannot keep up with the private consultations, as you've all noticed. It's just I can't keep up with them. There's way too many. So instead of doing that, I wanted to do what I've done in the past, like at the clinic in Arizona. What we would do is if we had, for example, 15 people coming in that week, instead of having all these 15 different sessions, I would sit with all 15 people and I would talk about in general the things we need to all know and understand and get ready for this journey. And then I would sit with each person individually, just go for a very short time, go over some minor details. But remember, these minor details that I'm talking about are, for example, your particular location where the CFCs has begun and where you are with it, what you've done, and all that sort of thing. So I just need to know all that. But keep in mind that when we talk about CFCs, chronically fermenting cells, which are what the Rockefeller clan refers to as cancer, but it's not. You know, we all know that cancer is just simply people who were born between June 21st and July 20th, right? After that, you're Leo. Before that, you're Gemini. And that's just the way it is. But none of that stuff is going on inside your bodies, right? What's going on inside the bodies to all of us, basically, is that our cells are adapting to the lifestyles we present ourselves with. And one of the things they have to do when they, under certain circumstances, like when they lose their mitochondria, because we live in the 21st century, and the immune system gets messed up because we live in a because we're at war, and they're at you know major attack on our immune system. But because of that, we all have chronically fermenting cells going on. Some of us have micrograms, some of us have milligrams, and then if we have a gram or more, then we have what's actually called clinical. That word, the C word. Um, and So that's why we call it CFCs, chronically fermenting cells, because that's exactly what they are. And remember, the only difference between any of them, all of them, is the location in which they began. All right, we're not talking about different types. When we talk about types, it's as if, um, I don't know, what's a good analogy? Well, for example, let's say we had flowers. Let's say we had chrysanthemums and we had orchids and we had roses. Oh my God, they're all different. Yeah, but they're all flowers. They have basically the same biology. There's a few differences here and there, and they wind up looking at having different colors, and they have relationships with different microorganisms and different insects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, the biology of a flower is a flower, and so the same thing. So just keep in mind its location that distinguishes all these different CFCs. All right, keep that in mind, because when you say, well, how can I be getting this and I have ovarian and this person is getting the same thing and they have pancreatic, and that's because the biology is the biology of this condition. Okay, so keep that in mind. So what we're doing is we're going to have three different groups. All right, and what I'd like you all to start doing is just go to drlodi.com, which is my website, dr.com, which is drlodi.com, / inner circle. And then get on there to get on the waiting list for membership. Okay, so do that as soon as possible so we can start gathering and put this together, and then actually have the physical launch. Okay, so the first group is going to be called Health and Healing Group. And this is the general one, and we deal with general health, healing, we have recipes, nutrition, lifestyle. We talk about CFC prevention, and anything from fasting to uh, eating kale to uh, movement or exercise to meditation to fenbendazole to you name it, so it's going to be general. All right, and I'll be open, and these are going to be on Zoom, so it'll be a private thing, so we'll all be on there. And what I'm looking forward to is instead of collecting questions like I have to do in this live stream, Sunday night live stream. But by the way, the live stream is always going to be. We're not going to stop that. So this is not going to change. We'll always do this. But what I'm trying to do is get to more people and more situations and all that. So on these, what I prefer, or not I prefer, but what we're looking for you to do is to we'll answer questions live. So as what I'm going to do probably is give a brief talk about some topic, and then you guys will just ask questions. And I'm not sure yet if we're going to have you go on screen and ask questions, but a lot of people don't want to show their face. I get that. Or whatever, we can do it verbally. You can write it in, but let's do live. We're going to do live questions and answers. All right, and I think that's better, because unfortunately during this particular format, what we're doing now, I have to. I pretty much need to try to answer as much as possible all the questions that have been written in. Okay, so that's going to be more of a live thing. All right, and so we're going to meet once a month and have an interactive question and answer. However, we'll be providing a lot of content during the rest of the days. All sorts of content will be dropping in there, and so it'll be a um, for education. There's also going to be on there, because you're on that group. There'll be like this. We'll have this private, um, almost like Telegram or WhatsApp or whatever. We have a private group where we can all be talking and sharing information throughout the week, in real time, and so someone in Paraguay can say, God, I got this problem going on, and then someone in Maine, uh, the state of Maine in the U.S. might have one answer, and somebody in Paris will have another answer. So you all will interact, and so will I. So it'll be a way for us to actually have a talk, and it'll be kept to just those of us who are member of it, right? And Yeah, so that's it. So that's going to be the health and healing group. The second group is going to be the parasite group only. Okay, and this would be, and I'd like this to be for people who during that session, which we're also going to do once a month. And then we're going to have a lot of different content. I'll be posting all sorts of stuff about parasites and therapies and how they came to be, blah 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 blah. But we'll take questions in real time. Um, and uh, so that we'll keep that. We'll try to reserve that just for the parasites, right? Because that's always comes up, and it's a very important part. And what's really interesting about that is that, do you remember a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, no one talked about parasites? I mean, here and there, we talked about it, and then it's always happens. I saw the connection. I did a lot of research, and I found out, wow. In fact, I'm not even sure that we can't go so far as to saying that CFCs are due to parasites. Can't say that it's not true, okay? Um, because there's compelling evidence that it is true. So, but anyway, I want to keep that group. We'll just be talking about parasites, and then the third group will be the CFC guidance group. Okay, and we have to put online cancer parentheses CFC because a lot of people who have never been um, involved with what we're doing would not know that particular acronym. All right. Again, the same thing. We'll have but with that one, we're going to have twice a month. We're going to meet twice a month to have questions and answers. So every other week, and we will be, we'll have that private community where we can all share, our opinions and our data and all that, and be a lot of content being sent to you. So now listen, the interesting or the one other aspect of all this is if you're in the parasite group, then you automatically have you're part of the health and healing group. And if you're in the CFC guidance group, then you're automatically part of the parasite and the health and healing group. So it's going to be very cool. So please go to drlodi.com/inner circle and get on that waiting list so we can get these things moving. All right, that's cool. That'll be very cool. Now, what I'm hoping to do is not we won't have to do the private um, consultations now. Because why? Because if you're on the CFC guidance group or you're the parasite group and you want to have you've got a particular issue that's concerning to you, we'll deal with that in the live Q&A. We'll deal with that. We'll work with that. We'll work with you. So I hope you all can, not worry about being, your anonymity can exist if you just, you don't. We won't mention your name or anything like that, but we can still deal with your particular issues. And so, what I'm trying to do is be able to get more people because right now I gotta, notice. I get notices every day from people saying I've been trying to get a consultation, and it takes, like you're booked up till the end of this century or something like that. So anyway, that's what we're going to try to eliminate. Okay, so we'll still have the live streams every Sunday night, Monday morning in Asia, uh, like we do now, where you send in questions and then I answer them, and then we're going to have these other three groups. Okay, and those will be on. My Thursday morning, your Wednesday evening in the U.S. Right? Same time again. Like for me, it's 7 o'clock. For some of you, it's 5 p.m. the day before, or 8 p.m. the day before, or something like that. And if you're in Europe, now however, there are people that live in places that are where it's like 3 a.m. during that time or 2 a.m. and they won't be able to attend. And in those situations, then please do send in your questions and I'll deal with them. Okay, and then you can listen the next day and find out what the answers were. All right. You can also hear everything else we talked about. But but if you're going to attend, then don't send those in. We'll do it live. Okay. All right. So it's going to be very cool. I'm so glad it's finally happening. It's taken us a long time because I didn't realize how much preparation this all takes, but it does. All right. But you'll all be on those private communities where we can, and believe me, you guys know so much. I mean, it's incredible what you all know because you're studying this because you're kind of motivated to figure out the answers. And so I love it. So I learned so much from you all. I know a lot of you think you're learning a lot from me, but it's reciprocal. I learn probably more. Okay. So, did I hear about Robert Kennedy talking about a dead worm in his brain? They are making fun of him. Wow. No, I didn't hear about that. Jeez, my God, please. I think of Rashid. What happened to Rashid? Oh my gosh. So that's remember, folks, we're at war. We're at war. Okay, so thank you, sincere servant. Thank you. Triple negative. Yeah, I'll talk about that. Sure. Yeah. Hi, Philippines. Yay, you guys are on. That's right. You're around my zone, my time zone, which you're a couple hours ahead of us. Is that it? Yeah. I think. Um, anyway, so you guys joined that. Now remember, but these live streams are, at Dr. Thomas Lodi MD for Twitter or X. All the rest, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, are all at Dr. Thomas Lodi, no MD. Um, and you can go to the website too and live stream that way. Okay. Um, and then of course all of them except TikTok are going to save them so you can watch them the next day, and because not everybody can stay up for all this stuff. All right. Um, what is the book on fasting again? Okay, there are several books, but one I think a really good one to start with is by Herbert M. Shelton, and it's called the Science and Fine Art of Fasting. This guy was, he's really my hero. My hero. He's like one of the most brilliant people regarding medicine. And when I say medicine, I don't mean drugs. When I say the field of medicine, what I mean is let's define medicine. I define medicine as anything who makes a sick person well. And that can be a pat on the back, that can be a hug, that can be getting out of your house and getting into the forest, going to the park. That can be, whatever. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes we got to go do something that biologically is not good for us, but it's going to make us feel better. And that's going to enhance our immune system. So, yeah, you have to change your life and you have to do all that stuff, and you're going to feel better. You're going to be glad you did because everything's better. But everyone, you say, yeah, but I missed this, I missed that. Okay, so schedule it. Schedule it every Thursday, every third Thursday of the month or whatever. I'm going to just blow it from morning to night. Okay. If you do, the next day you're going to do a cleanse. You're going to drink only juices or water, and maybe do a colonic and uh, try to get it out of you. So, but and when you do it, don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. Say, look, I needed this, and it's an immune enhancer. Because remember, we often talk about psychoneuroimmunology, which is psychology, neurology, the brain, and then immunology, the effect of the mind on the brain, which has an direct effect on our immune system, which, if fully intact, fully optimally functioning and you had CFCs in every cell of your body, they would be gone within 2 weeks. This immune system, designed by God. Okay, so there's nothing better. We're not going to find or produce anything better than this. It deals with this situation that we want to resolve on a fundamental biochemical level that we could not even imagine. So isn't that great? All we got to do is turn on the immune system. How do we turn it on? Well, it's actually on, but it's being blocked. Why is it being blocked? Well, if you have a couple hours, I can tell you all the reasons why it's being blocked. But basically, because you live in this century and in the previous century, and then so we have all the physical phenomenon that directly impact our immune system. But probably the biggest one is our mind, our stresses. Okay. In fact, I want to talk about stress a little bit before we get going. But let's see. Did I tell you all the stuff I wanted to tell you? I think I did. Okay. So we're all on still, right? Yeah. 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 Okay. Cool. All right. Now, uh, Chris Cuomo. I didn't hear about Chris Cuomo. What can I recommend about COPD? Your mother is suffering. Well, lots of things with COPD. There's two kinds of COPD. I'm not sure what you're talking about. The one is obstructive, where it's kind of like asthma or some bronchiectasis or some sort of way that when you can't get in and it's obstructive, you can't get, like with wheezing with asthma. And then there's emphysema, which is the opposite. You can easily get it in, but you can't push it out because the lungs are scarred. So there's two kinds of COPD. But when we're dealing with all that stuff, anything you have, any condition that's going on in your body that is not resulting in health, is due to two things fundamentally. Number one, toxins, toxemia, coming up and affecting you. The toxin accumulation impairs cellular function, impairs organ function, impairs the whole physiology. Okay, and as that happens, those particular areas that are the most affected begin to malfunction or not be able to function because they're being blocked. All right, so what do we have to do? Let's get rid of every potential toxin that at all. And we start with the mouth. Biological dentistry is, we should call it biological medicine. It's medicine. It's not dentistry. I mean, dentistry. I'm not. No disrespect. In fact, I have to do utmost. I don't hate to use the word respect. It's beyond respect for that profession. Um, but um, but I'm just saying. In fact, a good biological dentist is really a head doctor. They take care of everything from your cranial bones to your swallowing to your tongue, and of course the teeth and all the hidden infections, and then to undo what I have a really good friend who yesterday had to get, or day before, whatever, had to get a lot of work done on her mouth, and you know why? Not anything that she particularly did, but she had gone to a regular dentist and they just pulled out teeth like they normally do, which is ridiculous. They don't do it right. They don't take out the periodontal ligament. They don't sterilize it. They don't seal it. And what do you wind up getting? You wind up getting what they call jawbone osteonecrosis, or aka cavitations. And in those cavitations, these microorganisms proliferate, mutate, and produce biotoxins, and that affects everything along that circuit, that meridian, and that's that. But had it been removed appropriately, had those teeth been extracted, uh, they say biological dentistry. I would say take out the bio. Let's just call it logical dentistry. Okay, let's just this. You're gonna take out some infect stuff that's colonized with all kinds of microorganisms. All right, well then I don't know, let's sterilize it and then let's seal it so no more get in. Might be a good idea, huh? But okay, anyway, they do things like that. Also biological dentistry, by the way. Uh, also, send your blood off and make sure that every material that they're going to put in your mouth has already been proven to be compatible with your particular physiology. So it's called a biocompatibility test, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to have part two of our biological dentistry um, um, podcast with Dr. Emma Brahmian, um, who is I can't say the best in the world because I haven't seen everybody in the world, but I'm just saying, is all the ones that I've known, she's like up there. I mean, let's just say I can't find any flaws. All right. So anyway, but she'll be on, and we're gonna go over some stuff next. And so I want you all please attend that. We cannot overlook it. I can't tell you how important it is. My God. Okay. So when we start with that, then we got to repair the gut. We have to get rid of parasites. We have to clean out all the interstitial fluid with juice cleansing. We have to do all that stuff, and then make sure that we avoid toxins as much as possible. So you get things like this, like you put your phone in, and it's a Faraday material. What is Faraday? Faraday is material where they have conducting wire like copper, silver, whatever, and in really parallel lines, but they're very close together, and that blocks EMF. You put things in the put your phone in the Faraday cage. It's not going to ring. You're not going to get messages, etc. All right, so we can get Faraday clothing. We can get Faraday hat. We can get and what is that one company I'm getting some things from? It's called Longo, I think, Longo. They got a cap, T-shirt, and then underwear. You can the underwear you can make it bigger than your normal underwear, so you wear your regular underwear under first, and then you put that over it because you're protecting your gonads and lower part of uh, your pelvis, which are the organs, which include rectum and all that stuff, the prostate, the bladder, all that stuff. Um, yeah, and then you don't have to wash them every day because you're going to be wearing your other underwear underneath, and then a cap to protect your head. Yeah, all these things really important. So that's one thing that we can do to avoid being, as a defensive measure in this all-out war. By the way, we're at war. If anybody doesn't know it, it's time to know it because you can't win a fight that you don't participate in. Okay, so anyway, uh, okay, so you have an old bridge and you're going to go to biological dentist. Let them take a look at it. They'll do a cone beam CT of your jaws. They'll find out if there's anything going on deep that needs to be taken care of. Make sure the biological dentist you're going to, listen, if you guys are looking for a biological dentist, you go on to their website and look at under services. And if they put in root canals, they're not biological dentists. If they repair and save root canals, they're not biological dentists. All a biological dentist do is take that piece of dead material out, sterilize it, and seal it. Yeah. Okay, make sure they put no metals. So when they put implants, the implants are not titanium. They're some sort of ceramic like zirconium. Make sure they do biocompatibility testing with your blood for all dental materials. Um, yeah. Oops, I moved that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, um, so if they do all that, then yeah, okay, go to them, check it out. All right. They've got to know, they'll know the meridian system and all that. It's very, very important. You've got to go to a real, let's call them a real dentist and real doctors and real dentists. Okay, why? Because they're really there to do what they claim to do, and that is really help you. All right, so let me see something here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now, um, one of the things I wanted to do was I'll probably do it on that basic group, the health and healing group, and that is I'd like to go over some of the books I have here and just go through them a little bit and just tell you what they're there and give you some um, recommendations for reading. The reason I say that is because there's so much information out there. There's like way too much, right? What's that word? TMI, which is some acronym people use, too much information. Yeah, there's too much information out there. And the problem is that probably 99.9% of it is false because people advocate things and they're trying to sell things. And, um, if the intention is not to really communicate the truth, and that truth is in line, it has to be truth. It has to be in absolute perfect alignment with nature. Okay, and so if it's not in alignment with nature, then it's not. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, so let's go on. Let's see if we can get to so your COPD. Sorry, I didn't get back to you, Kim, but with your mother, with the COPD. So you got to do all the cleansing and all that sort of thing. We've got to look at her pulmonary function test to see, what her, and decide what kind does she have, a restrictive or an obstructive COPD, and what are her, her blood gases and all that sort of thing, so we can get an idea. And then there are lots of things we can do. Alpha lipoic acid, which helps restore cells. Um, uh, Actually, hydrogen peroxide is amazing for that. Not that you don't breathe it in. Um, you can get it IV. Um, Ozone, not in your lungs. Never breathe ozone because that's the only place in the body that is absolutely toxic. All right, but everywhere else, you put it on your skin, you put it anywhere else in your blood, and all that it's going to do. It's amazing. And if you think you have nothing wrong with you and you just want to stay healthy, ozone, vitamins. It turns out that whatever. Here's the secret, okay? And everyone, listen, write it down. That which is required to be restored to health is also required to maintain health. So basically, you're embarking on a new way of living that's not going to change. It's not like you're going to. Can you imagine someone saying to me, "Well, listen, okay, I'll do all that, but how long do I have to quit smoking for?" The answer would have to be as long as you like breathing. But I mean, how long do I have to eat healthy? Is that a real question? Yeah. So anyway, we're embarking on a new way of life. All right, and it's new only because we grow up in an artificial world with all sorts of incorrect information. All right, so that's so really my goal is to let's get the truth out there. Let's educate each other, and then let's figure out ways to actually implement it. Because I'm telling you, there's not, even though there is a lot of information out there, there's a lot of confusing stuff. I think deep down, most people know, except when it comes to diet, people don't understand. I mean, there are people adamant about eating dead animals and stuff. Got to eat dead animals. I've never felt better. But other than that, I think everybody knows. Like cigarette smokers, are there any cigarette smokers that don't know it would be better off not to smoke? Are there any alcoholics that don't know they shouldn't drink anymore? Are there any drug addicts? How about overeaters that know they should? So we all know. So the question is, how do we bring it into our life? How do we bring this knowledge in? How do we act on it? Right? And that's what I've been working on for a long time, and I'm pretty clear on what we have to do. And so the first center we're opening here will be in Bangkok. It'll be probably the end of the month or early next month, and it's fantastic. It's in Bangkok though, so unfortunately, the person, if you were to come, if you're out of the country and you come, then you have to, get a hotel or whatever, and we'll take care of all that. We'll, help you get there, and we'll pick you up and all that sort of thing. But you go home, and I mean, you're out there, and there's nothing stopping you from walking out this door and going, doing stuff that might not support health. So really, what do we have to do? We have to do what we're planning to do in Phuket, and as soon as we get the land, we're purchasing some land. As soon as we get that done, we'll get started with the building of it. But that will be in a completely natural setting, like a jungle, on a river, on a lake, or near the ocean, anywhere, somewhere near water, because water is life. Well, water and oxygen and light. But anyway, um, and there you come in, and we'll have villas that you'll stay in there, right? So you won't have to leave. So you'll be there for, let's say, 3 months if you can stay. And I would love it if it's 3 to 6 months. And then while there, you'll be living in the way that you want to live the rest of your life to be healthy. And what I've learned is that you've got to develop habits. If like we've often at Oasis in the U.S., because people we don't, it's not we don't have villas associated with it. You have to stay in hotels or Airbnbs or whatever. So you still go out, you still get, exposed to all those things, those triggers that are how you develop this thing in the first place. And so that's very difficult. So what I've learned is that you've got to really not only change people's database, what they think they know, to the truth. And by the way, any doctor, anybody, including me, recommends anything, say, Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Now, could you please show me the research you've read that will help me, uh, understand it? I want to know how you came to this conclusion. That's nice. It's polite, but do that. Make sure they do it. So everything I ever talk about, will be backed up. We've got all the research. In fact, you'll see on the website, which is up now, I think, for it's called Oasis Healing Asia, oasishealingasia.com. And we're almost done with the content. I'm still working on some of it, but um, it's got all the references, all the references. So none of this is opinion. For example, if I were to say to you that the strongest animals with the most protein on their body, the biggest muscles and all that, are vegan, you say, huh? How can that be? Well, just look in the jungle, go to the zoo. What do you see? You see elephants, rhinos, hippos, wildebeest, mooses, uh, whatever. Oh, remember the dinosaurs? Remember who was the biggest one? Was it the brontosaurus? It's like huge. It ate plants. Why? Plants are what they call autotrophs. AUTO. What is an autotroph? An autotroph is auto means self. It gets energy directly from the sun. No middlemen. No, nothing in the way. And guess what? Well, they live a long time. Thousands of years. The trees are thousands of years. Meadows are thousands of years, and they just live. They keep living. Uh, and as long as they have water and light and all the things they need, right? They need to have what they need. Uh, but then the animals that eat the plants, have only one middleman between them and the sun. And what do they do? These are the elephants, 60 to 90 years. The turtles in the ocean, or whatever, that are 200 years, 250 years. Um, hippos, rhinos, they all live 40, 60, 80, 90 years, right? Um, uh, and then the animals that eat the animals that eat the plants always eat the animals that eat the plants. So a carnivore is going to wind up eating not a carnivore. Why? Not such quality flesh. It's going to eat a what? A vegan. Like what? A zebra? A wildebeest? A deer? Sure. It's going to eat a vegan. Like vegans have what better things, right? If you're going to eat a steak, which is a euphemism for the muscle from a corpse, um, you're going to make sure that while that animal was alive, it was a grass-fed animal. Does that mean the grass got that animal so big and strong? Well, gosh, why don't I skip the middleman and just go for the grass? I'm going to be grass-fed. Um, anyway, the further you get away from the sun, the smaller you get, and the less endurance. As you know, the cheetah runs what, 120 kilometers an hour, or no, 100 kilometers an hour and 60 miles an hour, but they can only do it for 3 minutes. And then what? They're wiped out, tired. The horse, zebra, they run all day, every day, and they eat what? Grass. So strength, endurance, and what's the other big one that we all would like to incorporate and be part of who we are, and that is longevity. So all the lions and panthers and tigers and bobcats and house cats and dogs and hyenas and wolves, etc., they live 15 years. Horses, 28 to 40. Chimps, 55 years. Elephants, 60 to 90. Okay. So strength, endurance, and longevity seem to be the qualities that can be that are found in the animals that eat only the plants. Now, the point is, this is not an opinion. It's a fact. It's the truth. So anyway, that's how information. You've got to be satisfied when you learn something that it's the truth, okay? Because there's a lot of stuff out there. You won't. I mean, I got to do one on the kale thing and the oxalate problem. There's no problem with oxalate. I mean, there is, but it's not what they say. We're going to do one on the eating of flesh by any creature. And then we've got to talk about what are the other big ones? I forget. But then there's a couple more that I'm going to do specific webinars on with all the research because I don't want there to be any. I don't want anyone to think these are my opinions. Okay, they're actually things I know. I was plenty games. So Karen, I have to did not believe it. Okay, Kelly. Kelly's asking, can you kill stem cells from breast CFCs? If so, how? Yeah. Well, not only breast. Remember. Please remember. Listen. We're always going to keep this in mind. Whatever the first word is, breast, ovarian, brain, pancreas, blood, whatever, bone. Second word is, as you know, that astrological sign, which we know is chronically fermenting cells. The only difference is location. So yes, and the stem cells from these tumors are what successfully metastasize and spread. And so can we get rid of them? Yes, ivermectin, mebendazole, doxycycline, vitamin C, curcumin, um, and there's others too. But those, if you're getting those, yeah, yes, you can absolutely eliminate them, and that's the big deal. All right, you get rid of the tumor, but you don't get rid of the stem cells. All you've done is delayed the situation. You've given a little bit more time before it starts growing and spreading. So yeah, that's a very good question. So, and then you don't want to do anything to increase stem cells, like I don't know, let's see, high dose chemo. What else? Radiation. What is a new? I don't want this. Go away. Go away. Remind me later. My God. Okay, sincere, you guys say which is better, IV vitamin C, pure C, infused over an hour, versus IV vitamin C, ascorbic acid, sodium bicarbonate, infused over 3 hours. All right. Well, okay. The question is, what is the best? I think vitamin C for IV infusions, and without a doubt, hands down, it's sodium ascorbate, and the place to get that from is a company called Pure C, PURC, owned by a woman named Lior, who I've known for a long time. Her husband sadly passed away, but he and her had started it. He was belonged to a lot of the. He was a physician, belonged to a lot of the groups that I did. Wonderful man. But they started it. She's continuing it, and she's very, very, very strict about the source from which it comes, and that it is pure. So she can get away with saying pure because it's pure. So you use that. Why do you use sodium ascorbate? Anybody know why we use sodium ascorbate and we don't use ascorbic acid? We've talked about this. Let's see if you remember. Do you remember? Anybody remember? Not really. Or maybe you do, just keeping it a secret. All right. Well, the reason we use sodium ascorbate, right, is because ascorbate is what they call an anion, okay, and it's got to be attached to a cation. So it's like a salt, sodium chloride, magnesium bromide. These are all salts. So the second one, the ide, is they call an anion, and then you have the cation. So sodium ascorbate instead of ascorbic acid. What is ascorbic acid? It's ascorbate with a hydrogen. Hydrogen is acid, right? pH is the concentration of hydrogen ions, and the hydrogen ion is just a proton. Anyway, so take that hydrogen off the ascorbate, and it wants electrons. It's going to grab them. That's acid. That's what acid is. So let's exchange that with a sodium. Okay, we need a cation. Let's put a sodium on there. Okay, and you know what? The reason we really have to use that is because the only way we can absorb ascorbates is with sodium. We have what's called sodium dependent vitamin C transporter systems 1 and 2, which are on all cells. Some cells have the 1, some cells have the 2. There are other ways. There's called the GLUT receptors 1 through 8, and those pick it up directly. But most of it, of the ascorbate that we get, comes in through the sodium. And you can only absorb it in your intestines because the cells in your intestines, your small intestines, are the SVCT1s, right? It's a sodium dependent ascorbate. So sodium is the key to get in that door. So if you got a ascorbic acid going through the blood and it sees a doorway to get into the body, it's got to drop the hydrogen and grab a sodium somewhere, and then it'll get in it because it can't get in without it. So if it drops that hydrogen, what did we just do? We just dropped some acid. So it makes no sense to do it. All right. So what you need to do is you got to mix that with sterile water because sodium is very osmotically active. It's going to be very active. So you mix it with sterile water, and you could just do that. I always add calcium because the ascorbate can grab the calcium, so we can have a transient low calcemia, which makes you shake and you might think you're cold, but you're not cold. Put some calcium gluconate or calcium chloride, in the IV bag, not in the arm, in the IV bag, and within a few seconds or minutes, the shaking will stop. Anyway, so we add calcium, and whenever I add calcium, I like to add magnesium. So at least calcium and magnesium. You can add other things. I like to add in selenium and zinc, some of the other minerals that we need. But you don't want to add anything else. You don't want to add glutathione. You don't want to add all these other things that are also doing similar things because they're all donating electrons and everything. So you don't want reactive molecules in the same bag because they're going to do their reactions and they'll be less of they'll lose some of their potency by having reacted. So, and you always want to do alpha lipoic acid after you get a vitamin C or ascorbate infusion. Actually, the best way would be to take like 400 milligrams alpha lipoic acid orally. Before you start the IV vitamin C or ascorbate infusion, and then at the end do at least 300 to 600 milligrams IV of alpha lipoic acid. And whenever you do alpha lipoic acid, you got to add in the B complex because it really needs B1 or B6 to as part of its metabolism. You don't want to wind up with low vitamin Bs, so you do that. But anyway, they potentiate each other. Vitamin C will reactivate the ALA, and the ALA will reactivate the vitamin C. Also, one other really neat thing about that combination is that the vitamin C ascorbate, when you get up to pro-oxidant levels, it directly kills CFCs, directly kills them through oxidative stress. And it doesn't do that to normal cells because they have an enzyme called catalase. Anyway, that mechanism seems to work a little faster and stronger on the cells in the tumor that are actively dividing. And remember, about 1/3 of the cells in a tumor are actively dividing, and about 2/3 are sort of quiescent. They're in different parts of the cell cycle. So, so the ALA, however, on the other hand, goes after and can directly eliminate the ones that are in the quiescent stage. So it's doing them together, there's so much synergy, it's crazy. So anyway, so I would say, you do it over 3 hours. Now, depending on the question, we're talking about how do you administer vitamin C? Well, first of all, you should be taking vitamin C every day, sipping 7 to 7, and taking liposomal sodium ascorbate, not ascorbic acid. Look on the bottle, make sure. You're taking the sodium ascorbate liposomal, maybe 1,000 milligrams, minimum 3 times a day, plus you're sipping 7 to 7 because you want to make sure you've got all your physiological requirements for ascorbate satisfied. So then when you sit down to get an IV, it won't have to fill up any deficit. It'll go directly to being pro-oxidant and directly killing. So the answer to your question then is that it depends on what your deficit is, if any, because you want to get your goal is to get the blood levels up, the plasma ascorbate level up to at least 350 milligrams per deciliter. And so remember, the faster it goes in, the higher it's going to go. So one way that we developed for doing sodium ascorbate or giving vitamin C is, 50 to 75 grams a couple times a week. And then on the one day, we're going to devote the day to ascorbate because it's such an incredible and powerful tool. Therapy. It helps restore the physiology that we like. So you give a loading dose, perhaps 50 grams in 30 minutes. It's kind of tough on people because of that big osmotic shift. You might feel tired or achy and thirsty and all that. But if you can do it, whatever it takes to the loading dose is to get the plasma ascorbate level up to therapeutic as quickly as possible, and then you can do smaller doses to maintain it. So 50, and then in 30 minutes, then you do 25 for an hour, 25 an hour. And what we found is after hour 3 or 4, it starts accumulating, so you can actually decrease the amount you get. So I yet to be able to test this, but I think by probably 24 hours, we're only going to need like maybe 8 to 10 grams an hour to maintain it, which would be fantastic. We could do it all the time. So to answer your question, if you're going to get, if you first of all, if you're not taking it, you've already got a deficit, and you're doing it slow over 3 hours, maybe the last 10 minutes of that 3 hours, you might get therapeutic for a short time. But if you do a lot quickly, you can get up to that therapeutic level. But if you just do, let's say you just do 50 or 75 as quickly as possible, then you might get up there and be therapeutic for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So anyway, that's why we want to do a loading dose and then sustained, and maybe 6, 8, 12, 24, 168 hours. That's how many hours there are in a week. Let's keep you at therapeutic level. Would that be amazing? Absolutely. And that's what we're going to do. So anyway, let me get to your questions. And I wanted to, yeah. So what I wanted to talk to you about, because now, if anyone's ever had a consult with me, or you know that I am always focusing on one of the fundamental things that, in addition to cleansing and all the things we're talking about, is thyroid. We talk about the thyroid, and the thyroid for many, 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 many reasons. But please remember what thyroid is. You have a thyroid gland over here in your neck, and its role, its function, is to maintain energy production in cells, right? Energy important? Yeah. Why? Because there's about 55% of the energy produced by a cell from taking stuff from the environment, like a nutrient and a gas, glucose and oxygen, and it produces energy in the form of ATP. It does that in little organelles inside the cell called mitochondria. Well, as it turns out, the purpose of the thyroid then is to deliver iodide in the anion form, so it can help depolarize the mitochondrial membrane and increase ATP or energy production. So clearly, if you don't have enough, you're gonna be slow. You're gonna be like that. You're not gonna think too well. You have a hard time losing weight. But everything's affected by it. And then if you have too much, so too much is too much. So, which brings us to a really important point, and that is about anything, whether it's oxygen, water, vitamin C, whatever it is, we need what we need, and nothing more and nothing less. Oxygen, really kind of important. You don't live more than 5 minutes without it at a particular concentration. Okay? So currently on the planet Earth, it's supposed to be around 21% oxygen in the air, 78% nitrogen, and then a little bit of CO2. Don't tell Bill. What's his name? Yeah. Don't tell Bill, and don't tell Klaus. Don't. You don't want to pop their bubble. Actually, you do. You want to pop more than their bubble. Um, anyway, a little bit of CO2. Anyway, so uh, from looking at like rock layer, looking at the layers in the rocks from from and tracing things back throughout the ages, we see that there probably was a much higher oxygen content in the atmosphere at one point. Probably it was up to 28%, maybe 30%, maybe. We're not sure. Um, but you really don't want to go higher than that because, as I said, it's essential for life. However, if you put 100% oxygen mask and you wore it all the time, you would get emphysema. That oxygen would tear up your lungs. It's too much. So we need what we need in the amount that we need and nothing more, nothing less. Okay. So water, really, really important. Most people are walking around partially dehydrated. And water is necessary. Why? Because it's the medium in which all biology takes place. It's biochemical reactions. Um, and I mean, it's got other purposes too, but so we need what we need. Well, I like, if a little's good, I grew up in America, man. If a little's good, I want more is better. Well, no, no, turns out to be true. Nothing. So I drink, let's say, 10 liters a day. Not for long. I will dilute my blood. I will have low electrolytes. Everything will be low, and I'll die. Okay. So it's the same with vitamins. Everything has got to be. Now, the wonderful thing about being a natural being, which we used to be, before we became hybrid mutants, which was when we've been working on it for a long time, but we're pretty much, we're pretty much kicked out of paradise. With paradise being, I'm not talking about the biblical paradise. I thought paradise being part of nature. Um, we're pretty much out of nature right now. I don't think we do very little in our lives. Not all of us, but very little, most of us, um, that involves nature. You know, most of our interactions and the settings and the context in which we live our lives is artificial. You're all sitting in a box somewhere. I'm sitting in a box, and we're here. We're talking to a machine. You're listening to a machine. I'm talking to a machine, an electronic machine. It's got eyes looking at me. I mean, on a fabricated, you know, chair in front of a fabricated desk, all that. And there's no animals in here. Oh, I have cats. Yeah, I got three incredible cats. Actually, all cats are incredible. All animals are incredible. Um, but I don't. That's it. Yeah. Keep the insects out. So what we've done is we've said, okay, look, we're not natural, so we're going to live in these artificial worlds. We're going to we go visit nature at the park. We'll go to the park and see some trees. Oh wow, that's a tree. And then we'll go to the zoo and see the animals, right, in cages. Um, that's about it. That's our relationship with nature, right? Which is crazy. You know why? Another secret. Okay, now this one is a big one, but and it's hard for people to get their minds wrapped around it. But we are nature. Oh my God, yes. Why do I say that? Well, gosh, if we'll all agree that a dog or an elephant is nature, right? Okay. Now, if they step out of a window on the 33rd floor, what happens? Well, they fall at 32 feet per second squared. What is that in meters? 50 meters? I don't know. Yeah, every time. They're subject to the laws of nature because they are nature. Now, what happens if we step out of a window? Oh, same thing. So we are subject to the laws of nature because we are nature. Whether we like it or not, or whether we know it or not, we are nature. And therefore, in order for us to be optimally functioning, we need to live our lives such that all of our requirements, biologically and psychologically and spiritually, are being satisfied. And when they are being satisfied, we hum, we purr, we function, we're optimally functioning. And when our biological, psychological, and or spiritual needs are not being met, we have to adapt because we want to stay alive. And those adaptations are the problems we're talking about. They're called arthritis, they're called CFCs, they're called heart attacks, they're called stroke. Those are the attempts to adapt to situations in which our biological needs are not being met and psychological. I mean, psychological needs not being met. Are you kidding? Yeah, of course not. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite in this world. We grow up with such absurd lives. It's amazing that we're not all in psychiatric hospitals. Yeah, when you're young, right, before you can even talk, your parents are saying, "No, stop, don't. You're not good enough. We're gonna fix you." Yeah. So number right out of the womb, and we're getting uh, rejected unless we change. So we get rejected right away, and then we're told we got to do this. And I'm 6, 7 years old. I want to go outside and play. No, sit in the chair. Sit in the chair and listen to this person and learn this stuff. I want to play. No, if you still want to play, we're going to give you a drug. It's going to keep you in that chair. Yes, you've got attention deficit disorder because you're not willing to sit in the chair. You know what kids do when you leave kids alone? They are running, climbing, playing. Why? Because they're full of energy and they're happy and they're laughing. It's called, what is that word again? Health, health, health. So, health and energy are different aspects of the same thing. So, let me talk about stress again for a second. So, all these stresses that we have, and stress I define as when you don't like what is. If you like it, it's exhilarating, and you use all those biochemical changes, physiological changes to actually improve performance and all that stuff. So it's a whole different thing. So stress, is I've got the physiology of being chased with a guy with a gun, and I'm not. I'm just sitting in a chair, so that's stress. Why? Because I'm doing what I want to do. I don't like this job. I don't like this marriage. I don't like this whatever. Um, So anyway, so when we talk about the adrenal response, right? Hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal. That's how it works. The end product of that stress response is that our adrenal glands produce cortisol and adrenaline, which is also called epinephrine, and some norepinephrine, which is on its way to becoming epinephrine. I mean, it's same kind of thing. And what they do is they increase blood sugar, they clamp blood vessels, they increase heart, they do all sorts of stuff that actually shunts all the blood and nourishment and waste removal away from your vital organs to the muscles so you can fight. Oh, wait, what? Unable? Are we back on, you guys? And TikTok, are we back on? Say yes. Somebody say yes. TikTok, yes. Hello? TikTok. I guess. Oh, okay, yes. Thank you, Lori. Uh, they just told me I had to correct it, so I had to move this thing, and I did it once, and they said I didn't do it right. I did it twice. They said you didn't do it right, but then they put me on. So again, I did I ever tell you how much I abhor interacting with machines and pretending that they're not? They talk to me. Have you seen that recently? These things that are in airports and stuff. Uh, they're vacuuming the floor or whatever. They're cleaning the floor and they talk to you. There was one the other day. I was in the airport a couple of days ago. There was one coming at me. I just wanted to see what happens. I just didn't stop. I kept walking towards it. It finally stopped and started saying, um, yeah, it's just really great having relationships with machines. Um, anyway, so the stress response we always think of as glucocorticoids, which are cortisol, etc., and epinephrine, which is a neurotransmitter, which is also a vasoconstrictor, and all sorts of stuff. Okay, so um, by the way, all those things that are deleterious that result from the cortisol are modulated by DHEA. DHEA is also a hormone produced by our adrenal. So you want to have your ratio of DHEA slash S, which is sulfated DHEA. Why when you do a blood test, you do a DHEA slash S, because that's the storage form. So if you do a DHEA, it might be up and down, but DHEAS is more of a your cumulative net amount. It doesn't change, throughout every hour. You want that to your cortisol level. How do you check your cortisol level? You check AM when you wake up, or like 7 a.m., 8 a.m. So as soon as you can get to the lab, and then around 4 or 5 p.m. And it should be high in the morning, like up 15, 16, 17 maybe, and then down to like 4, 5, or 6, 7 in the afternoon, and then it goes up, and then about 12:30 in the morning. Okay, so that would be normal. I mean, healthy, not normal, healthy. Uh, However, uh, when you're stressed, you're making too much of it, and it does all sorts of stuff. It increases blood sugar. It does all kinds of nasty things. So when they talk about stress, they've talked about that, and we know that um, with stress, it's always been that um, uh, when they want to look at the body's response, or how did the body, what are the physiological correlates of stress, and you know they have a profound effect not only on what I was talking about before, but on our immune system. Okay, so everybody, even if you don't have a diagnosis, which is a spell put on you, but if you haven't been told that you have a overactive or underactive thyroid, or if you have had CFCs in your thyroid and you had to have your thyroid removed, or they told you did and you didn't believe them and you didn't do it, whatever that is. Well, thyroid problems, they all come from not getting enough iodide. And remember we talked about what iodine does. That's what thyroid's supposed to do, is to maintain the energy production levels of the body, right? That's the one thing they do. But remember, in nature, nothing ever does one thing. There's no hormone that does one thing. The only chemicals that do one thing are perhaps enzymes. They might be a decarboxylase, and that's all it does, takes off carboxyl groups or whatever. But it does it all over to many different organs. It has all different effects, so it has to. But that's an enzyme. But that's about it. Other than that, every hormone, every peptide, everything has multiple effects. And when you see them all and you see how they all work together, you have come up with one conclusion, and that is there is no way. It's not conceivable that there is no God. It's not conceivable. And I know you don't like the word God, some people, because you're right. I get it. God has not got a white beard sitting up somewhere in a cloud. And it's not a he. He doesn't have genitals. It's the whole, right. Our whole I understand. So why you might have a problem calling yourself an atheist. However, if you understand that you cut your finger and it heals, that's pretty intelligent, huh? So the entire universe is made of, fabricated out of intelligence. That's God. Okay. So anyway, um, the fabric of existence, which is intelligence. I mean, from one perspective. Anyway, so when you see how all these things work together, you just go, "My gosh!" I mean, let me tell you something that blew my mind. When I was studying, and I was a student, and I was studying, and I learned that women have discharge. They have vaginal discharge, um, and what do we think? I don't even know what do we normally think that's vaginal. I just have some discharge, or it's everything in the universe is functional, has purpose. Well, the discharge, in other words, the stuff, it's got color, it's got odor, it's got consistency, and all that sort of thing. Well, it's coming from where? The uterus. Okay, and the uterus has what? Glands. And what are those glands responsive to? Hormones. So as a woman's hormones, or the estrogens, going up, it's stimulating the glands to produce a certain kind of substance, mucus. So when it's low, which is most of the month, it's producing a certain type of mucus. Now the bacteria or the other microorganisms that live in the vagina are that eat that mucus. The byproducts for most of the month, when the estrogens are low and that mucus is different, is producing acid. And if you were able to get some of that on your, and you hold it like this, and you move it apart, it's going to break real easily. So it's acid. Oh, it just turns out that acid is spermicidal, kills sperm. Interesting. Also, the thing that breaks, in other words, it's not. It's hard to, if you were a microbe, it's hard to climb something that breaks like that. Now, somewhere around day 12, with a normal cycle, day 12 to day 16, or the estrogen is high enough that it's producing a different kind of mucus that is stringy. And when they metabolize it, it's not acid, it's alkaline. So there's 4 or 5 days, 6 days of the month where the vaginal pH is higher, meaning it's not acidic, meaning it doesn't kill the sperm. And now the sperm can climb up those ropes. Wow. This relationship. So in other words, if we didn't have the right microorganisms, vaginal organism, we would never get pregnant. That means we would, what? It's all connected. Yeah, it's all connected. It's connected I mean, that's just one mild thing. But when I learned that, it blew me away. It just blew me away. Um, anyway, so this stress response is when you are, what stress is. I'm stressed. In other words, you don't like what's happening. Yeah. All right. There's two kinds of uh, stress. There's acute stress where it's a real deal. I mean, uh, you're in an automobile accident. You trip down the stairs. Someone's chasing you. I mean, these are acute stress. You got, okay. Then there's chronic stress. Chronic stress is when you repeatedly get something that's happening, something that's disruptive to you. And then, so it's just like inflammation. Acute inflammation heals, chronic inflammation kills. All right. Same with stress. Now, it turns out when they looked at these glucocorticoids and the epinephrine and all that stuff that's being produced by the adrenal glands in response to stress, they found out that they affect things like the ability of lymphocytes, which are white blood cells that kill CFCs and other things. Uh, uh, they inhibit their proliferation, their growth. They change the kinds of chemicals they produce, called cytokines, so that they're having different effect. And they change the ability of those white blood cells to migrate. So, it basically disrupts what they call the neuroendocrine axis, the brain and hormone axis. Okay, it disrupts it. So, uh, and now we know also that tumor cells are pretty much um, affected by different hormones. Different hormones have a different uh, effect on our on tumor cells. Okay, so this in this stress, the adrenal gland, you have the hypothalamus, which is a part of the brain, and the pituitary, which is part of the brain. Hypothalamus sends out chemicals that tells the pituitary to send chemicals to ovaries or thyroid or testes or adrenals, to tells them what to do. Stop doing it, stop making it, or make more. That's what it does. Um, so that whole thing gets changed, right? And with stress. Um, and the other thing is the autonomic nervous system, which is that part of your nervous system that's not voluntary. There's one part of the nervous system that has to do with heart rate and how much blood is flowing in a particular tissue or organ based on the microvasculature, which is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. And so it shunts blood into different directions, right? So you shunt the blood away from all your internal organs to your muscles and all that. What else happens in stress? You no longer need to use your frontal cortex. You don't need to think. You just need to act, right? The guy's coming with you at a gun. You can't say, let me see if I went to the left, maybe if I, you're dead. So you got no thinking, just. And right now, at that moment, don't need the immune system. So let's take energy away from this. So the immune gets suppressed. Your cognitive ability gets suppressed. You got high glucose. You got all these things. Okay, so you're having that all the time. When you're having that all the time, it's a whole different story. So anyway, all the research in stress has looked at the glucocorticoids, which are cortisol, etc., and epinephrine, right? The catecholamines. They're called catecholamines, which is those kinds of chemicals. And what, they found it's been found by all the studies that the glucocorticoids actually can affect tumor growth. Yeah, and so the what hasn't been looked at is the thyroid too much, right? And that's what I want to tell you about now, because why do you need thyroid? Why do we focus on thyroid? Not only for energy production, okay, but it's also very, very important, okay? So when we look at the effect of glucocorticoids on the tumor growth, we can see that they can actually enhance the growth, okay? And then there's what they call the adrenergic signaling pathways. Adrenergic refers to the types of chemicals produced which are like catecholamines for like the epinephrine and things like that. Okay, and they actually can modulate the proliferate growth and the and whether or not the growth of a tumor and whether or not it will go through the normal route of apoptosis. Everyone knows that apoptosis or apoptosis is what they call programmed cellular death. That is, all cells will recycle themselves at some point and make way for new ones. So instead of dying and producing a corpse and with all of its stuff, all of it gets recycled. So it's a very efficient thing. It's called apoptosis. So tumor cells don't have to do that anymore. They get that turned off. So they get to live forever. Not forever, because they need a host. Anyway, so it turns out that the stress level can alter that, and so you get the neuroendocrine dysregulation and all that. So now they looked at thyroid because so what happens during thyroid? Okay, during stress, what happens to the thyroid during stress? Well, it turns out the thyroid has a bidirectional relationship with the immune system. In other words, thyroid sends out signals to the immune system sends out signals. So bidirectional. Okay, so it turns out that hypo or low thyroid function actually impairs T cells and B cell responses. Okay, now what are T cells? Those are T4s, helper cells, CD8s, which are the activated lymphocytes that are going to kill, right? And the B cells are the guys that produce antibodies and stuff like that, right? So so all that. So anyway, what that's what the thyroid has. That's its effect, and it turns out that there is an interaction between the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, which is the endocrine hormone axis, and the hypothalamic, that the HPA, and the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid. Those two are actually interacting. Now, there are these inside of cells, like when a receptor lands on a cell, it stimulates some action to go on inside the cell, all right? And there's one group of chemicals called kinases, protein kinases, right? And there are different forms of it, alpha, omega. So it turns out that those different forms of that kinase, when they get activated, have different effects on the immune system. Okay, so what does all this have to do with thyroid? What are you talking about, Lodi? Okay, so protein kinase, which is it gets activated. Okay, and it turns out the protein kinases in a cell are crucial regulators of T cell activation and proliferation, of cytokine production, and so anyway, so it turns out that, and there's different kinds. There's the alpha, and they have a little symbol. It's an O. I'm not sure because that's not the omega sign. The omega sign looks like a W. Of course, they use Greek, and they're not going to use anything else, but for some reason. So here, what did they find in their studies? They found out that acute stress increases the cortisol, right, and the adrenaline, but it doesn't increase T3 and T4. In other words, it doesn't increase the thyroid hormones. However, with chronic stress, the adrenal hormones go back to normal, but the T3 and T4 go down. In chronic stress, T3 and T4 go down. Okay, yeah, that's pretty crazy, right? So what they found was they exposed these animals to stress, and the way they defined stress for these animals was they kept them like locked up, so they couldn't move, they couldn't get out, they were restricted, and the ones that were not stressed were free to move around. So yeah, I guess that's pretty good. You can't move around, you're going to be stressed. Okay. So it turns out that what I just said, the adrenal ones, the cortisol and the epinephrine go down acutely, but if you're getting chronic stress, they go back up to normal. But then the T3 and T4 go down. All right, unless now, which means their whole immune system got trashed. Unless they did what? They gave them thyroid. They gave them T. They only gave them T4. They should have given them T3 and T4. But they only gave them T4. And so, but during the chronic stress, when the T3 and the T4 were low, the tumors grew because they gave them tumors too. And they grew much faster compared to the control group, which didn't. So they had a control group who they were free to roam around, but they had a tumor, but it didn't grow compared to, all right, so unless they treated them with the T4, right? They gave them, if they did hormone replacement. So one of the things they found out is, you may have heard us talk in the past about IL-2, interleukin-2. Interleukin-2 is a cytokine. In other words, it's cytokine. CYTO. Cyto means self, cell, and kine is just like a chemical. So cytokines. They produce chemicals. They produce cytokines to talk to each other, to signal each other. So IL-2 is one of the ones that signals. It's a recruiting cytokine. If IL-2 is high, it's saying, come on, we need all the macrophages, we need all the natural killers. I need you all get over here now. We got a problem. Okay, so that's what IL-2 is. So it turns out that it's reduced in chronic stress because of the T3, T4. How do I know it's T3, T4? Because when they gave T4, it didn't happen. So in other words, the low thyroid decreased IL-2 production. That's a big deal because I use IL-2, if I can get it cheap enough, for helping people restoring their immune balance. Yeah. Uh, so classically, the studies have been on the adrenal hormones, right, and how they affect the immune system. But recently, there's been studies, several studies, looking at what the effect is on the thyroid. And as I said, during acute, nothing happens. Chronic, it happens. Lowers immunity. Okay. Um, the When the T3 and the T4 are normal, they stimulate T cell production. They stimulate T cell maturation. They stimulate the immune system. When they're low, they can't do that. Okay, and they're low in chronic stress, which means so. What I want with everybody, it doesn't matter if you have CFCs or not. If I was talking to you about parasites or I was talking to you about COPD, whatever it is, we've got to get your thyroid functioning because it's like kind of it's it's the energy is everything. Because when the energy is gone, you're dead. And when you're full of energy, you're healthy. Like a little child jumping out, they're healthy, right? And even if you're young but you're sick, you're not in bed because you don't have energy. Or you can be 120 years old and running around and you got energy. So you're so energy, and energy equals life. Energy equals life. Energy equals life. One more time. Energy equals life. Okay. So anyway, so I was talking to you about these protein kinases, which are messengers inside the cell, and there's the alpha, and then there's the O, whatever that means. So actually, they're produced. They go. And I'm not going to go through that. So it turns out that the O, it also mediates the activation of these transcription factors like AP1 and NF kappa beta. NF kappa beta is a central molecule involved in inflammation. So the stress, chronic stress, stimulates chronic inflammation. All right, so that's a big deal. Uh, wow, nice balloons, you guys. Thank you. And hearts. Wow. Um, that's beautiful. Thank you very much. Um, so, and so, and the alpha is involved with the IL-2. So there's the alpha and the O, whatever the O is. These had direct effects on the tumor growth and spread. Chronic stress, not so much of an effect by the adrenal hormones at that point, but more by thyroid. And if you're not replacing the thyroid, so that's why when we say, everyone, we don't have enough iodine, and that's the fundamental reason why we have thyroid problems, okay, whether it's hyper or hypo. So we've got to replace the iodine. When we replace iodine, when we give you iodine, when you take iodine, uh, it'll pick up what it needs, but it also, if you give it a little extra, it starts to decrease the output of the thyroid hormone, so it can decrease it. In fact, it was the original treatment for Graves, and Graves is hyperthyroid. So if you give enough iodine to someone who's hyper, it'll bring it down. Okay, so now you're not now. Let's say you're hypo, but you're iodine deficient. Well, we've got to give you the iodine, and it might even suppress you a little bit more. So what are you going to do? You got to be taking thyroid to just keep you up to having a normal thyroid function, while over that year and a half you're replacing the iodine that you need because you're taking Lugol's or iodoral. Okay, so uh, now when they look back on epidemiological studies, that means when they look back at epidemiology is kind of like it's almost like anthropology of a condition. They're not doing an experiment or anything like that. They're just looking at trends that are going on with groups and everything. Anyway, so the epidemiological studies have shown that uh, when they looked at the refugees in East Germany, that they who were getting anxiety and depression, of course, um, had low thyroid. Same with who? Vietnam vets who had PTSD, and civilians who had PTSD all have anxiety, depression, and low thyroid. And it gets turned around with thyroid. So it's very, very important. So what I always recommend to everyone is to go online and get Thyrobanz, Thyrobanz. Because why? Because it is readily available. You don't need to have you don't need to get a piece of you don't need to get a magic formula by one of your favorite local witches or warlocks. You can actually get it yourself. Oh my God, you can take care of yourself. That's unheard of. You know, it's really weird, right? If someone says, I mean, this is not like a weird question. Who's your doctor? I don't have a doctor. You don't have a doctor? What's wrong with you? Nothing. That's why I don't have a doctor. So you got to have a doctor. You realize? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine growing up thinking you have to have a doctor? I can. I can imagine that because I know that they're telling young mothers to, when your baby's well, when it's doing fine, bring it to the doctor. The doctor's going to check it. A little well baby check. Check what? It's well. Well, we're going to fix that. We're going to give it some injections. Why? So it stays well, so it doesn't get sick later. But it's well, so you're going to give it some injections so it stays well. It's already staying well without your injections. What are you talking about, doctor? Don't ask me questions. Oh yeah, and yeah, they don't like questions. And yeah, why don't they like questions? It's easy. They don't have any answers. Pretty simple stuff. Uh, and then the other thing too is when people have Hashimoto's, which is low thyroid or hyperthyroid, whatever, it's associated with stress, anxiety, depression, all that sort of thing. So thyroid. We never think of it in those terms, and I'm just here to tell you that it turns out to be probably, I guess, because we're talking about chronic stress, which is having been told you have CFCs, is definitely, I mean, at minimum, we'd call it chronic stress. It's more than that. It's like current traumatic stress syndrome, not PSTD. It's CSTD, current traumatic stress syndrome, CTSD, uh, CSTD, ah, CTSD. Okay, current traumatic stress syndrome. Because you're being traumatized every day. Every day when you wake up, the moment you wake up, oh my God, you remember. Even when you're sleeping, you're dreaming about it. And then of course, then you've got to go to the doctor's appointment where they're going to make you feel worse. Uh, well, this is incurable, which is another way of saying, you're going to die. Um, and we'll keep you alive a little bit longer. It's not going to be pleasant. You won't have any hair. You won't be able to eat, but we'll keep you alive. What? What? That's what you're offering me, Doc? Yeah, that's the best we got. Huh. All right, so you realize, doctor, that I'm going to leave this office and never come back again? Uh, I wish we could say that. I mean, I wish you could all say that. But you know what they're going to do if you want to leave? They're going to scare you so bad. You're going to say, okay, okay. Right. If you don't do what I say, you're gonna have things growing out of your head, and you're. Keep in mind, when you don't tell the truth, it's called a lie. And you could be lying whether you know it or not, right? Because if you learn the wrong thing, like for example, if I learned somehow that I was taught that France is actually in South Africa, in the southern part of the African continent, and I was telling someone about it, I'm lying, but I don't know it because I was taught that. And then if I know I'm not telling the truth, then that's so. Well, the guys with the white coats and the girls with the white coats, those witches and warlocks that are in the House of Horrors, um, they lie all the time. What? How can you say that? Because it's true. Well, I mean, if you ask them where the bathroom is, they'll probably look at you know where that is. But don't ask them anything else like what should I eat, or don't ask them is there anything I can do that doesn't involve poison? No, 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 absolutely. Okay, so they don't. I don't know if they don't. Well, a lot of them know, but they don't care. You're being harsh, Dr. Lodi. No, they're being harsh. They kill on purpose. What do you mean on purpose? They don't want to remember. Well, how come when I took care of this? It's just one example. I took care of a lady who was had widely disseminated non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Was told she was a single mom. Told that her daughter is going to be an orphan. So what a nice my doctor told me my daughter's going to be an orphan. Pleasant guy. Uh, anyway, so she came to us and she didn't have that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma anymore after about 6 months. And she went back and she said, "Oh," showed him the PET scan and said, "Want to know what I did?" And he said, "No." So he didn't want to know how that happened, even though he said he couldn't do it himself. Nothing he could do that could take care of her, and that she was going to die. He didn't want to know. So, what does that tell you? Can that in any way be construed that he cares? Sure. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it can. He cares about himself and his career. I mean, he makes a lot of money from doing what he's doing. Why should he change? Money. I don't even want to get started with money, but it's which is why I don't have any. Um, I remember my mother telling me, "You've got to get a respect for money," and I used to think, "Oh, what does that mean? How do you respect money?" I don't know. Still don't know what that means. Well, you got to have money if you want to live in this world. No, no, you got to have money if you want to live in the artificial world. Well, what are you going to do? Go live in the jungle? Yeah. How about that? Now, what are you going to do? Hmm. Live, commune. Anyway, it's hard to have conversations with most people. But I love talking to you guys about it because you don't answer me. You can't talk to me. But I'm sure you all agree. Most of the stuff I say, right? Yeah. Hmm. All right, good, good, good. All right, so now let's answer questions. I'm so sorry it took so long, but hey, uh, where's a question? Here's a question from Lisa. For anemia, is Floridix iron herbal a good supplement to consume, or is spirulina better, or both? Thank you. Okay, so anemia. So remember, whenever we're going to talk about anything, we always define terms. We got to have the same definition of terms so that we're communicating. So anemia means when your blood count is low, and we're talking about either the hemoglobin or hematocrit, which are ways of talking about the amount of red blood cells. And why are they important? Because they carry oxygen, deliver it to the cells. Okay, so when there's not a lot of them, you're not getting enough oxygen to the cells, and you are not making energy, and you're tired. So you can actually there's a very you can equate your blood levels with oxygen, which is life. Now, if you get anemic, in other words, you don't have enough red blood cells, how can that happen? What are the possibilities? Well, number one is you're not making enough, so production is down. Number two is you're losing it, you're bleeding too much, or um, they're getting somehow toxic and exploding, and inside it's called hemolysis. Anyway, so if you're losing it chronic, you have a chronic loss. Let's say you're bleeding and you don't know it, or you're having small bits, small episodes of hemolysis where it's bursting and you don't know it. Well, every time the um, that happens, in other words, you have less iron, because iron, remember, is what is part of the hemoglobin that holds the oxygen. So if the iron levels are low, that's one of the ways one of the reasons why you wouldn't be able to produce it is if you didn't have enough iron. You weren't getting enough iron in your body. So you wouldn't be able to make new red blood cells. So it would be you'd be very you'd be anemic. Okay. Now, and there's other nutritional deficiencies where you can be anemic, where you're not getting B12 or folate, which are vitamin Bs. Um, Although the red blood cell gets big instead of small, um, it's still a nutritional deficiency. Anyway, but a lot of it is iron deficiency. Most women that are premenopausal women who are menstruating, they're probably on the lower level of what's called normal hemoglobin and hematocrit, or slightly anemic, which means below the level, the range. Um, but whatever. So when that happens, when we go below the range, that stimulates a whole cascade of events that stimulate our body to increase it. One is it's sensed by the kidneys, and they produce a hormone called erythropoietin, which goes to the bone marrow and says, "Come on, make some blood cells. Let's make some blood cells." Uh, and which is why people who have kidney failure aren't doing that, and they need to get erythropoietin shots. Otherwise, they won't make red blood cells. Anyway, so the new cells that come out, even normally, just under normal, and you got a normal hemoglobin, normal hematocrit, there's a certain number of cells that are larger and like they're younger forms, and they're called reticulocytes. So one thing we can look at is your reticulocyte count, and it should be normal for someone who's losing blood at a normal rate. What does that mean? Red blood cells, unlike other cells, do not have a nucleus, and they don't have mitochondria. Wow. So they only live 120 days. Why 120 days? Because they run out of parts. How do they run out of parts? Because they can't get new parts. Why? Well, it's the DNA. Remember, the DNA is not the boss, it's the parts department. It's not the brains of the cell, because if it was the brains of the cell and you took out the brains, it would be dead, and it doesn't die. You take out the brains of any other creature, it dies. So it's not the brains. So anyway, they live 120 days, so they're continually, being degraded and eliminated, and you need to make new ones. So you have a certain number of reticulocytes all the time. Well, if that count goes up, if you lose blood, like acutely from a bleed or anything, hemolysis, whatever, you should have an increase in reticulocyte counts, showing that your bone marrow is responding, and you're going to be getting new red blood cells. That's what should happen. So there's ways for us to check. But let's say you finally conclude that someone actually has anemia, and it's due to iron deficiency, and you need to get iron. Well, big problem is, especially if you have CFCs, is that CFCs actually have about 15 times more transferrin receptors than normal cells. And a transferrin is the protein that carries iron to cells. Because you can't keep iron alone, it's nasty. You got to escort it. It's got to be escorted. It'll do damage. So you got to do that. So Where is that? I can't find it. Um, and why do CFCs need more iron? Because it's part of the whole division, the DNA dividing. So they're going to divide rapidly. They need extra iron. So in fact, they grab iron. And if you ever look at the blood of someone with CFCs, they're going to have low iron and a high ferritin, and that's kind of one of the hallmarks. So um, anyway, and they are avid. They want that iron. So if you take iron, they're going to get most of it. It's not going to go where you want it to go into making red blood cells. Number one. Number two, uh, if you take it in normal form, iron, it's going to probably constipate you. Why would it constipate you? Well, for a couple reasons. One is iron is if you're taking it, and you're getting it like a large amount in the blood at the time of absorption. Iron is what's called osmotically active. In other words, it pulls water in. And when it pulls water in to the cell, now there's going to be less water outside, and so your stools will get hard and be hard to have bowel movements. Number one. Number two, iron is also involved in with the microbiome in our gut to produce methane gas. And methane gas, oddly enough, acts as a inhibitor of the nerve cells in the gut that are causing peristalsis. And peristalsis is the way things move through your gut. Like it squeezes here, and then it's open here, and then squeezes. That's peristalsis, right? So when you hear, that's a peristaltic. So the peristalsis gets slowed down. So between that and the pulling the water out and all that, you wind up getting constipated. So you should be eating really healthy, which is lots of vegetables, especially those that are not thermally degenerated with heat, right? Remember, you guys, heat. They call it cooking. Um, and cooking sounds, I guess it sounds good, right? Cooking isn't cooking always mean a good thing? Please, will you look at my post up there? He needs help right away. What are you talking about? Who? What? What post? Tell me again. I don't know where you mean. I don't know. Where do you mean? I'm sorry. Can you repost it? I'm sorry. That's why we're gonna have those. Remember, you guys, go to Dr. Lodi / inner circle, and get up in there, get on the waiting list, because we got to get that thing activated. We got to get that thing activated. All right, you guys. Very, very important. So I can do things like that. Answer more specifically. But what I want to help you. Not far up. Well, please. I don't know. Well, I'm sorry, I can't see it. You repost it, please. I can't. Um, I want to help, but let me get back to this thing here with the Floridex. So Floridex is a liquid form of iron. Now, iron has, and we've talked about this many times, iron has two forms. It has a 3 plus and a 2 plus. What that means, when we talk about a plus or a negative, what we're talking about in scientific terms is called valence. And 3 plus is a different valence than a 2 plus or a 1 plus. Um, As it turns out, our gut can only absorb divalent metals, meaning two. Now, iron comes as a ferric, which is 3, and a ferrous, which is 2. Now, ferric is a storage form. Ferrous is more of an active. So ferric is what we find in most vegetables. But if you're healthy and you're making a lot of hydrochloric acid and you're not drinking alkaline water because you're smart and you're keeping your pH low and acidic, when you eat that ferric that's in the, I don't know, spinach, broccoli, whatever, it turns it into a ferrous, and now it can be absorbed. What else turns it into ferrous? Ascorbate. What's ascorbate? Vitamin C. Huh. Now, so you put it, you eat it, it goes in your stomach. Let's say 80-90% of it turns into ferrous because you got a lot of acid. That other stuff, when it arrives to your duodenum, there's some ascorbate, which takes the rest of the ferrics and turns them into ferruses. And then they can get absorbed in through the divalent cation transporter system. You know what else ascorbate does? Vitamin C. It actually stimulates our body to produce more divalent transporter systems. So it really helps with iron absorption. So one thing you can do is make sure you've got sipping 7 to 7, got enough vitamins, sodium ascorbate in there, because it will upregulate your ability to absorb. Make sure you're getting ferrous. Now, in Floridex, they do have, it's a ferrous form. The same in a lot of the pill forms of iron supplementation. It's the ferrous. But it's and for years what I would do is I would use the Floridex, because the reason is because it's in a liquid form, it'll be spread out throughout the part of the small intestines. It'll be smaller amounts, and it won't give you as much at all of the osmotic problem. It'll still probably wind up being, unless you absorb it rather quickly, it'll get metabolized and turned into methane gas. But anyway, we see less constipation with that. But again, like I said, it's going to go to the CFCs. Now, the other way that you can, um, the other way that you can uh, uh, make sure that you're going to get enough iron is because remember, if you're eating healthy, you're eating lots of vegetables all the time, and so there's a continual flow of small amounts of iron, and as it's coming through, it gets distributed. But if you have CFCs, a lot of it's going to go there. So what I recommend for people who have CFCs and they have a significantly low iron and anemia is you go to your doctor and you tell them what you want to do, and they're probably going to say, "Who are you talking to? I'm the doctor. What are you telling me how to?" So if you've got one of those, I would be happy to talk to them, him or her. I sorry, can't think of any other pronouns. Um, for him or her. You don't want me to say it, right? That's kind of rude. Anyway, I'm happy to talk to them and explain to them the way it works. Remember we talked about erythropoietin, which is that hormone made by the kidneys that tells the bone marrow it needs to make hemoglobin. So what does that do when the erythropoietin gets there? The hemoglobin's going, the bone marrow's going, it's sending out signals. We need iron. We need iron. Okay. Now remember, the CFCs are always saying we need iron. We need iron. So if you can get the bone marrow to scream just as loudly as the CFCs, you can actually get a bigger portion. So that's what we do. We give you intravenous erythropoietin, which is usually given subcutaneously because it lasts. But we give it IV, and then followed by something called Venifer, which is a very safe brand of intravenous iron. So now that you've given the erythropoietin, you've woken up the bone marrow, and they're calling, come, 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 come. So now when you give that Venifer, you're going to get a much better proportion to where you want to get it, not where you don't want to get it. Yeah, so that's just the way that works. So that's what I do. Other than that, just eat healthy. Eat healthy. Make sure you have acid in your stomach. Take betaine hydrochloric acid, HCl, 2 capsules or 3 capsules or 1 cap. You'll know because if you took too much, it's a little bit warm. It's most people. If you're 40 and above, you need it. Or if you're just sick, you have a really acidic. You take it 10 to 15 minutes before you eat so that your stomach's very acidic, and you'll be taking ascorbate all the time, and all that's going to help you absorb it. All right. So now the answer to spirulina is that spirulina is way better than spinach. I mean, spinach. I mean, you should be eating spinach all the other because spinach is like 49% of its calories come from amino acids, i.e., proteins. Very good. It's got other stuff too, but it's got some iron. But spirulina, for like every 100 grams of spirulina, you've got like 180 milligrams of iron. Whereas with spinach, you've got about 2.5 milligrams per 100 grams. So not a lot. So it's a big difference. So spirulina is fantastic if you can get spirulina. If you can get the actual real living spirulina, that tastes, it's really good. I was looking at food. I actually think if you had fresh spirulina, all you need, and chia seeds. You wouldn't need a lot else to maintain your nutritional requirements. Probably some salads and you got to get your cruciferous vegetables in. So you'd need broccoli sprouts at least. But I'd say broccoli, cabbage. You still got to eat the vegetables. But you're pretty much done a lot. Between spirulina and chia seeds. So somebody who can't eat a lot because they're sick all the time, you want to make sure they're nourished. Spirulina and chia seeds. Okay. Liposomal sodium ascorbate is hard to find. I don't know why they put it with the ascorbic acid when it's liposomal. Anyway, so that's that question. So spirulina is fantastic. If you can get it, eat it, right? But still eat lots of vegetables because they've got everything else in it and cruciferous. We won't go into that now, but yeah. And then if it's really anemic, and because you got CFCs, and then realize that they're going to grab most of it, so you've got to figure out a strategy to get it over into the bone marrow. Okay. Now, what? Oh, I'm gone over. I gone over. I can't help it. I'm sorry. I'm not going to stop. Right. Yeah. I hope you. Everybody got some time. We got time. I know some of you don't. You got to run. I hear you. But if you can hang out for a while, let's at least do a couple more, okay? Because I talk too much, so I didn't really get a chance. Anyway, so I think Floridex is great. Remember, it's in the Ferrous form. It's a 2+, so it's a good form. But a lot of the supplements are. Now, this is from Lisa, and does fenbendazole cure breast CFCs at stage 4? Or does one need combination of ivermectin and praziquantel 3 weeks on and 1 week off with fungal medication along with other protocols? I have viewed your parasite webinar and read Dr. Yu's book, Accident to Blow Up. Yeah, Dr. Yu, great book. He's got one other one too. Yeah, they're really good. All right, well, to answer your question, now, fenbendazole became well known to the world because of Joe Tippins, and that's all they use. I think he used a little vitamin E, which helps it, and they use vitamin A. I forget his entire protocol, but actually it's on the MD Anderson website. But you can look it up online, Joe Tippins protocol. But he was just using that, so that works really good. And but Uh, so does ivermectin, and so does niclosamide, and so does praziquantel. Anyway, all of these drugs are what they call anti-helminthics. Helminthics is a helminths. I don't. Scientists are like they come up. Why do they come up with words that are like hard to pronounce and have no meaning? I mean, they have no. They don't even make sense. Anyway, they call worms helminths instead of calling them worms. Helminth. Helminth. Who would think of such a word? Helminth. Oh, a scientist. That's right. uh, so anyway, so these are anti-helminthics. All right, and they are a major problem. I mean, helminths. Right? We've got roundworms, flatworms. We've got flukes. They're just and they're all over, and they're in everybody, and they're prolific, and they learn how to turn off your immune system, and they they uh, they produce cysts, and so they can be protected. And anyway, so now the question was, can we just do fenbendazole, or do we need ivermectin in it? So the thing is, do them all. First of all, you got to get rid of the parasites. So you're going to have to do a combination of at least three antiparasitics, and ivermectin, um, and then one of the benzimidazoles. There's several. There's albendazole, mebendazole, fenbendazole, and there's other ones. Etribendazole. And they all work by a certain mechanism. So the although that's although there we go. Okay, all right. So the benzimidazoles, basically what they do is, which is mebendazole, fenbendazole, albendazole. What they do is they block microtubule movement. Now, microtubule are micro-sized tubules, and they're necessary for cell. They help maintain the cell structure, and especially if it's a single cell organism, for movement. They can't move around without it. It's kind of like their microscopic skeleton. Anyway, so do CFCs. When they're in order for them to divide all of our cells, for them to divide, the microtubules like separate. That's how that happens. So if you block microtubule movement, they can't divide. It's the same thing with the helminth. So that's how it kills the worms, but it also does the same thing for CFC. So it does that. The other thing that the benzimidazoles do is that they block glucose uptake and utilization, which is usually CFC's favorite food. But remember, they also like glutamine. Now, you got to do them all initially. And you're going to do 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 3 weeks on, 1 week off for about at least 11, 12 times. And then once a year, you're going to probably do 3 to 5 cycles, 3 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off. And in between, when you're not doing it, you're going to take lower doses of ivermectin and mebendazole, and maybe niclosamide if you wanted, curcumin, and vitamin C, so that you can be all the time killing CFC stem cells. And all of these antiparasitic medications are relatively safe because they're used worldwide in people of all ages, including animals, and they just adjust the dose based on weight. Right? So I think like in cats, it's 0.2 milligrams per kilo or something like that. Anyway, now ivermectin, which 2015 Nobel Prize, was discovered in Japan, and it is miracle. Yeah, it all. In fact, it's used for river blindness, which is I think it's like, oh, there's usually about 250 million people on the planet who are actively uh, dealing with it. And ivermectin, so they take, so you got that many people at least taking it, and they've been taking it 10 to 15 years. So I think that qualifies for a clinical trial of safety. Ah, 250 million people over 10 to 15 years. Yeah, qualifies. Okay. Okay. Anybody who wants to know the science, how's that for safety? And you just lower the dose for a smaller person or animal. Okay. But what does ivermectin do? It actually inhibits the growth and progression, proliferation of CFCs, right? Um, and they've shown it. They've shown it with breast, ovarian, glioma, prostate. They're all the same. Remember, it's the same biology. Um, it also, um, whereas CFCs have turned off the. Remember, we talked about apoptosis, recycling. They've turned it off so they can keep going. Ivermectin puts it back, makes them recycle themselves. And they recycle, they don't come back as a CFC. Um, it actually blocks blood vessel growth, so the tumor can't grow, and that's really important because without new blood vessels, it can't grow 1 millimeter. It also blocks several of the signaling pathways, and you're not going to know them, but the PAC1, different kinase pathways, um, which are necessary for proliferation and survival, blocks that. It blocks the multi-drug resistant. They call it multi-drug resistant. Turns out to be synergistic with chemo. It decreases free radicals, which they produce. It inhibits NF-kappa beta, which we talked about as being chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation underlies all of these conditions. So it's amazing. And it also does something that is, I love, and that is ivermectin preferentially kills CFC stem cells. Wow. But fenbendazole, just like it's one of the benzimidazole, so I told you what it does is, you know, right, so you remember you got the hookworms, whipworms, tapeworms, roundworms. They're all affected by this because it blocks the microtubule and it also blocks glucose utilization. All right. It also um, modulates the PDL1 and PD1, uh, PDLD and PDL. So what those are is the programmed death ligands. So when in standard oncology, when they talk about oncoimmunology or immuno-oncology, whatever they call it, or an immunotherapy, they're going to give you something that's going to either block. See, CFCs they can grab onto a T cell and prevent it from going to kill the tumor. So they've come up with, they call it a checkpoint inhibitor. That's a checkpoint. So they have checkpoint inhibitors. So it either binds to this and blocks it so that the CFC can't bind, or binds to here and it can't bind. So they block that activity and then the T cell can go in. That's what they call immunotherapies. Well, fenbendazole takes care of it also, right? Pretty cool. And it does one other beautiful thing, and that is when the immune system shows up at the tumor ready to eat it and it gets into the tumor microenvironment, which is low oxygen, high acid, it changes. So the macrophage, ready to take a bite out of that tumor and show it to the T cell, gets in there and it's like, whoa, and it turns. And now it becomes, instead of an M1, it becomes an M2. A tumor-associated macrophage starts working for the tumor. Fenbendazole can reverse that. Kind of cool. And there's other things it does too. But I just wanted to say. But you know what kind of blows my mind? There's a lot of research. There's even more. And then plus you have Joe Tippins, that 2017, 2016, 92 tumors. He was told to go home and go to hospice, and not to this day he still has no tumors. And, but what the conventional people are saying is, well, although there's many studies that are showing promising results, the available evidence is still preliminary, and more rigorous research is in clinical trials is necessary to determine if the safety and success of fenbendazole as a therapeutic option for the treatment of cancer. What the hell are you talking about? We don't know if it's safe. Wait a minute. Did I might understand this correctly? Now we've FDA approved cisplatin, paclitaxel, gemcitabine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These things um, kill. That's why they have maximum tolerated doses, because any more and you're dead. And these are deadly, 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 but they're okay. Well, can you tell me what are the side effects with fenbendazole that you're worried about? Might be too much. Well, the side effects can include things like I don't know, vomiting and diarrhea, but they're very rare. But anything else? No. So when they say things like this, when you read things like this, you just have to realize that it's not worth it. Don't even, yeah, it's not worth even talking to these people. All right. Now, remember I mentioned niclosamide. Niclosamide is it's important antihelminthic. I like it, and it's like if you're going to do only three, I would say ivermectin, mebendazole. The reason I like mebendazole is that when I look up fenbendazole and mebendazole, I can't find that any studies that show that fenbendazole kills the stem cells as well. But I would say take both, because you can't argue with Joe Tippins still alive. So anyway, but then third one, I would say niclosamide over praziquantel, unless of course you have a specific one, like you have a parasite called Pistacorchus, then you got to take praziquantel. And there are other reasons too. But anyway, but the niclosamide, what's really cool about it is that it inhibits CFCs, but has no effect on healthy cells, right? So it's pretty cool. No toxicity. But it blocks the migration, and it blocks the metastasis, right? And it also blocks several of the oncogenic pathways, such as the WNTB catechin. You might not know that one, but that's involved in metastasis. The RAS, the STAT3, the Notch, NF kappa beta. We talked about the mTOR pathway. So all that stuff it blocks. And it also activates the P53, which gets the tumor suppressor gene, because it's usually knocked down. It activates the PP2A and the AMP kinase. So it activates these things that are normally suppressed. So what? And does the same thing by modulating the PD1 and PDL pathways, which is that immunotherapy thing, the checkpoint inhibitor, modifies that too. So it's pretty amazing. And in fact, they're considering it now standard treatment for ovarian CFCs. I don't know, ovarian, but it's everything. And finally, niclosamide can rewrite the epigenome. Anyway, and then you go, if you're doing praziquantel, there's a bunch of studies out there saying that praziquantel and albendazole together are like big time killers of CFCs. So I would say do them all, okay, Lisa? Do as many as you can. Yeah, ivermectin, praziquantel. But if you can do ivermectin, praziquantel, you got to add in either mebendazole or albendazole. Or you could just do niclosamide. But I would do three, because remember, you don't want to do the least possible. You want to do the most. You want to get rid of these guys. And remember, if you undertreat them, they migrate. You don't want them migrating. Okay, are we losing? I think we're almost time to go. You guys got to go to sleep and all that sort of thing. Anyway, my sincere apologies for being So late today. We're trying to figure out stuff. Um. Anyway, so y'all remember now. Let's get these groups settled so we can start really getting some more effective uh, interactions, right? More personalized interactions. Let's get these three groups set. So go on drlodi.com/inner circle and then get on the list. And then as soon as we're ready to launch, you'll know and be part of it. Okay. All right. Sawadee kap, namaste, namaskar, and aloha. All right. See you all next week. Next week.